right, here we go. Well, thanks, first of all, for letting me have the stage. I'm coming to you live from my sister's apartment here. I'm having some internet issues at home, so I figured I wouldn't risk it and migrate it here. But without further ado, let's just jump right into this. What are we going to talk about today? The topic is developing a proper way to visualize state. What does that actually mean? Well, let's find out. I figured it would be a good idea to start off with some light Twitter wisdom. As we know, the internet is a very, very wise place. And it goes as follows. Ask a programmer to review 10 lines of code and he'll find 10 issues. Ask him to do 500 lines and he'll say it looks good. Well, if you come from a development perspective like myself, you've probably seen this scenario multiple times. But I think this doesn't just apply to like coding and development. I think it also applies to Terraform State. With that in mind, what is this? I think everybody here in the audience, or at least everybody working with Terraform on a daily basis, knows what this is. It's your run-of-the-mill Terraform plan output. And at least in my personal opinion, although there have been some quite good improvements made to it, it's still a sort of messy affair. And with that tweet that we saw earlier in mind, looking at this, a thorough review, particularly of a complex piece of infrastructure, can fall through the cracks quite easily. Once this output, this 5-mile-long terminal output hits your retina and makes its way up to your brain, you might instinctively respond with, looks good. Let's just get it done. And you move on, you Terraform apply. And what happens is something like this. Well, I think we've all seen it before. It's an absolute classic. You're just sitting there going about your day and AWS has other plans. So the point I'm trying to make is Terraform State in its current way and how it's being communicated is sort of messy, sometimes not very clear. And the most important part is that it invites slip-ups and errors. So I thought, what if there was a better way to interact with Terraform State? And I set out to create a solution, and the solution is the product, the project that we're going to talk about today. And it's called Pluralith. And to put it into one simple sentence, it's an application that lets you visualize your Terraform state and it integrates seamlessly with the Terraform CLI, or at least that's the goal. The application is currently in development, so we'll see what it looks like in its final stage. But now that we know what the project is and what we're going to talk about, we're going to move on to the part of these presentations that the audience usually cares less about, and that is who's the speaker? Who am I? My name is Daniel Putzer. I am a web developer by trade, and I'm currently a university student in Vienna, Austria. And recently, I think about 6 or 7 months ago, I became very interested in this whole cloud ecosystem and particularly infrastructure as code. I think there's something really elegant in being able to just write a script and then use that script to deploy infrastructure on the other side of the planet. I mean, we all know that in production, it's not as elegant as it might seem, but I think it's still a very interesting topic to engage with. So if you want to reach out to me, here is my email and some socials. Throw me an email or a message if you have any more questions. But now you might be asking, how does a guy like me end up working on Terraform State? Why am I working on this? Well, I actually was working on a different Terraform-related project, and I was trying to talk to some infrastructure people, some professionals in the field to find out if anybody was actually going to use the product that I was building at that time. And during those interviews, a topic that came up over and over again was Terraform State and how it's sort of clunky and messy at times. And so I figured, well, maybe I should just work on that instead, or at least first before moving on to the other project, since there seemed to be a demand for it. And that's how I ended up here. That's why I am creating Pluralith. And with that in mind, moving on, this is the actual informational part of the presentation. I decided to split it into 2 major chunks. First, I want to quickly dive into sort of the design philosophy. It's a fancy term, but what I want to do is I want to get the key ideas and describe what I had in mind when I was trying to put this thing together. And after that, we won't hesitate and jump right into a live demo so you can actually see what the application would look like on your desktop. So let's jump into the design philosophy. There are 3 key ideas that I want to highlight that sort of shaped the design of the application. And here we have them. The first one is minimal friction. That means the user should never have to go the extra mile, and the application should integrate into his workflow, his or her workflow, as seamlessly as possible without him or her having to do any extra things. The second part, the second major idea, is something I like to call keyboard nativity. Since Terraform is an application that lives entirely in the terminal and is operated entirely by the keyboard, I figured an application that wants to hook into this workflow needs to honor this workflow and also stick with keyboard nativity, with being able to operate it only from the keyboard. The third point is arguably the most important because it gives the application a reason to be, and that is the clear communication of Terraform State. Arguably, at least for me, since I'm a very visual person, having a sort of infrastructure diagram is already much clearer than seeing some terminal output. But I also tried to put even more effort into getting the information that is important to the user right away. So now that we know the 3 key ideas that are behind Pluralith, let's look at how these key 3 ideas manifest themselves in the application. And the first one, minimal friction, is pretty obvious. You can do that best with a native Terraform CLI integration. The user basically runs Terraform as he always would. You just type in your Terraform command, and all you have to do is add a simple command line flag to the end of your command. Currently that is --p, and the application pops up, grabs the state from a working directory, and graphs it. Moving on to keyboard nativity, that one is also pretty straightforward. There are a bunch of hotkeys spread all over the application. So while you switch from your terminal to Pluralith, you can just hit those hotkeys, navigate the application, and see what you want to see. And the last part, clear communication, I put some thought into this. And in addition to actually graphing the Terraform state, obviously, I came up with a few nifty UX tricks, UX optimizations to make the information that is relevant even more visible and communicated even more clearly. So with all that in mind, that is actually the theoretical part sort of this demo. And now we're actually going to see the application live. So this was going to be interesting. I don't think I've given a demo of this application before where everything works smoothly. So this might be a premiere. But let's hope so. Guess we're going to find out here in a second. I hope you can see my desktop now. Katie, if you can't, let me know and I'll figure it out, but I think it should be working. So as we can see, the application is right here in my dock already. And I could launch it from here and sort of navigate the application, open a state file manually, but that's not what we want to do. We want to actually launch it the way it is intended to be launched, and that is from the terminal while you're working with Terraform. So what we're doing is we're navigating to this sort of demo project that I created. And we're going to deploy some simple AWS resources. Don't pay too much attention to what is actually being deployed. I picked a few random things, sort of random things that deploy quickly so we don't have to wait for AWS to spin stuff up in the background and can see results right away. So let's say you're working with Terraform, you're in your project, and what you want to do is plan and actually see the graph for that. So let's hope this works. This is the moment of truth. I'm just going to hit enter. And here we go, launching Pluralith in the terminal. The application pops up, file pops up, and here we go. Here we can see the actual Terraform state. And let me just see what is happening. Okay, perfect. Okay, you might be wondering, why is everything pulsing in green? That is something that we'll get to here in 1 second. I just want to highlight some other key elements of the UI first. Let's just take a look. First of all, I thought about how could you visualize multiple files at once. This is potentially an application where you have many files open at the same time. And I looked to browsers for that. I took browsers as an inspiration, Chrome, Brave, whatever you're using. They're all tab-based, and that's a system that works quite well. So I decided to stick with that. Then moving on, we have a little simple explorer here. As I said before, you can open a directory manually. You can navigate it, different folders, different file structures, as you would in any OS. But that is not something that needs particular attention. Let's move back to our graph here. There are obviously some other things that are interesting. First of all, you can zoom in and out as you would need to with any graph. If you have a particularly large infrastructure, you want to see all of it. Here we have the filtering feature. That is something we'll dive into here in 1 second. And obviously, since this is a plan output that needs to be highlighted, plan outputs sometimes don't resolve all the connections between resources. So this is something that I decided to put there to alert the user. And obviously, here's a little settings pane where you can interact with the settings of the application. You can toggle the Terraform CLI integration on and off. That was very important. So if you want to get rid of the application, it's easy. And the secret filtering is also something that we're going to talk about in a second. What's particularly important right now is the hotkey map. As we talked about before, keyboard nativity was something that I had in mind when designing this. And you can see there are already quite a few hotkeys in place to navigate the application. For example, as we can see, we can shift tabs with command and the arrow keys. So you can see that works quite well. There's obviously a key to open the hotkey map itself, so you can have quick access to that. And navigating the graph itself is also possible entirely from the keyboard with WASD. I took inspiration from gaming here, a personal hobby of mine. And obviously also the filter commands are linked to hotkeys, which we will see here in a second. Now, I prepared a little change to this infrastructure, but I actually messed something up here. So let me just go back to the terminal, clear this up, hit Terraform apply. And now we're going to see what it actually looks like. The infrastructure is going to look slightly different because we made a change in the backend. And we're going to add this --p flag again, as we're used to. I mean, we're not used to it yet, but hopefully soon. And we're going to add auto proof since I deployed this multiple times and we can deploy it without any issues. So now let's hit enter and see what happens. As you can see, the plan state is being reset and Terraform is running. Now we should be able to see infrastructure pop up as AWS deploys it, and it works perfect. So now getting back to the green pulsing, what is that? Why is everything pulsing in green? Well, I thought this is one of these key UX optimizations that I had in mind. Since the graph is already quite colorful with all the AWS icons, especially once it gets a bit bigger than this simple deployment, how do you actually detect what has been changed, what has been destroyed, and so on? Well, just putting a green frame around something that has changed wasn't enough. It wasn't clear enough for me because I figured with all these colors, just a green frame that slips through your site easily. So I thought maybe if there was some more interaction with it, like if you had a pulsing effect like this one, it would pop right into your eye. You could see all that has been modified since the last state refresh right away. That is sort of the key idea when it comes to this pulsing effect. And obviously here, everything's pulsing in green because this is an entirely new deployment. But we'll see here in a second, if it lets me select all this. 1 second, I gotta update the infrastructure in the background again. All right. Now, if we move back to our terminal here, clear this up, and go for another Terraform plan, always adding our --p at the end. Now, as you can see, it's being reset. Terraform is running, generating our plan state, and perfect. Now we can actually see changes to an existing infrastructure, and there are different types of changes that have been made, as you can see from the colors. The color code has been borrowed from GitHub and is pretty straightforward. Yellow resources are resources that have been modified in some way. Green ones, as we already discussed, have been added or created, and red ones have been destroyed. So you can see it right there in the graph. It's pretty clear and concise with the pulsing animation, what has happened since your last Terraform State refresh. But sometimes it's also important to get a little more detail in your view of your infrastructure. You want to see which attributes, for example, of this little subnet that we have here have changed. So you can see this is a simple diffing view, maybe looking a little bit fancier, but standard stuff. And here too, we are using the same color code to highlight that this subnet has basically been changed from a private subnet to a public subnet. And yeah, the same color code to keep it consistent across the application. And now moving back to our graph here, let's actually take a look at the filter feature now that we have different types of events, so to say. First of all, we can turn on the filter right here. And as you can see, everything that has not had any changes since the last state refresh is being grayed out. And you can also filter for certain events. So let's say I just want to see updates, additions, or destructions. And here we go. As if we move back to our hotkey map here, we can also do this with hotkeys right down there. So Command-Shift-F turns on the filter. I'll just remove this. Command-Shift-F turns on the filter. And we can toggle different types of events also from there. So that's pretty much it for the demo. One thing I want to touch on before we end the demo is secret filtering. Secret filtering is something that has been brought to my attention on Reddit multiple times. Since the application is currently closed source, how would you be able to trust it? Well, I'm considering multiple ways now, including going partially open source to increase that trust. But for now, the way I'm handling this is it doesn't really fix it, but I want to give users the ability to filter things based on trust that they already have. And that you do with this secret config. It's basically a simple config object with a sensitive keys array. And you can add any attributes here that you want Pluralith to filter out before processing your state. So just to give an example, the owner ID here, there are no real secrets in here. So I decided to just use the owner ID as an example. If we go back to our diffing view here, we can see that the owner ID is being stripped and not shown. All right, so let me just move back to the PowerPoint and take this full circle. 1 second. All right, we should be back in the PowerPoint. Okay, so just to take things full circle, what Pluralith does is it gives you the ability to go from what you see on the left to what you see on the right. And all you have to change about your workflow is add a simple command line flag --p to your Terraform commands. And hopefully now you're interested in wondering what the state of the application is currently. It's currently in development. I already rolled out, launched an early alpha release a few weeks back, but from the feedback that I got from that, I realized the application is not ready yet. So I rolled it back and I'm now preparing for a private alpha. So if you're interested in that, or if you just want to get notified when the application is ready for you to download, hit pluralith.com/hashitalks, and you can leave me your email there and I'll make sure to reach out. There is also a little checkbox below the email field that you can click on. And I think it says something like, I want to be involved in development. If you click on that, you'll be added to a different mailing list and I'll make sure to reach out to you for the early alpha testing. So you can actually give hands-on feedback and let me know which features you're missing or what bugs you encounter. So with that, that's pretty much it for me. Any questions or comments are welcome. Here again, some contact details for me. And one last thing I want to point out is that Pluralith already has a subreddit. And I think at time of this recording, it has around 40-ish members. So join us there. And this will also be one of the main places for user feedback and feature requests. Hit us on the website or in our subreddit. And with that, that's it for me. Handing it back over to Katie. Thank you very much. There she is.
Hi. Hey,
Hi,
Daniel. Thank
Katie.
you. That was great. That was
Thank
great.
you.
I do have a few questions that I want to ask you if you have the time.
Yes, great.
Um, so the first one that we're getting is, can you help us understand how much this will be once it's out and available?
That's an interesting question. Well, as I said, I'm still considering my options on this one. I'm considering going partially open source, potentially even going fully open source. Don't take my word for that yet, but it's really early. The product will be free for now, and I'm intending to keep it free and maybe just build other products on top of this, but I'm not entirely sure which direction it will take yet. So if you want to keep up with the application, leave me your email and I'll make sure to let you know the latest. Thank you.
Nice. Another question that we're getting is, can this be used for CI/CD?
That is a very good question, actually. That came up on Reddit the other day. So currently, it's more intended as a sort of dev tool. You run it on your local machine, right? And it helps you develop Terraform code, Terraform configuration on your machine. But since it has been brought up multiple times on Reddit, it wasn't something that was on my radar. But I think it would be a very good application as a sort of pre-apply step, as many people have mentioned. So very good question, and I hope we'll be able to bring the application to CI/CD pipelines soon. It's a very interesting context for the app.
A final question I'm seeing is, can you let us know when we'll be able to get our hands on this and actually use it?
Well, as I said, I rolled out a sort of public release already a few weeks back, and that was not the best experience for users. So as I rolled that back, I was thinking, how could I sort of improve the experience of this launch next time? And I'm going with this private alpha, which is sort of still up in the air. I will reach out to people that sign up for it, but at the time, I think it's really hard to give a timeline on when it will be widely available, because there might be features that I'm sort of blindsided to. As I said, I'm not that experienced yet. I've come from a web development background. There's still a lot to learn for me in this ecosystem, and specifically also about Terraform. But with that in mind, I hope soon. I hope to get it out there as soon as possible, but I can't give any details yet. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, well, you'll just have to keep us updated then.
Oh, I will. Just leave me your email. That's what I'm pitching all the time. So I'll reach out to you. No worries. No worries. I'll
Nice.
let you know.
And I see we have your email here and where to find you on LinkedIn and Reddit.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, Daniel, thank you so much for your time today.
Of course. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for letting me have the stage. And to all the people at Hashicorp, specifically also you, Katie. Thank you very much.
Of course, I'll talk to you soon.
Will do. Bye.
Bye, thanks.